Here, your South African knife guy, as I renamed my channel, and today I'm going to be doing a review on this knife. Now, this is a legendary knife made by a very legendary knife maker, Warren Osborne. You guys are probably familiar with this knife. Anyone that is a knife collector pretty much knows this knife. It's one of the most iconic knives in knife history, so let's just go ahead and get right into it without any waste of time. So this is the Benchmade 940 carbon fiber knife. So you get this nice bag. They have pretty good packaging with this, right? It's got a nice bag here, Benchmade on it. There's the name, Benchmade. There's your box, Benchmade. Now we're gonna get to the actual knife itself. I like the foam inside the box, that's kind of nice. So I bought this knife just a few minutes ago, and I think I'm gonna definitely just tell you guys right off the bat that this is going back. There's no way I'm keeping it, not for what I paid for it. But let's just take an overall look at the knife. The reason I got this knife was because I wanted to check it out, okay? This knife is so iconically well known for its knife design, which is designed by legendary knife maker Warren Osborne. He passed away in 2016. He pretty much put Benchmade on the map all by himself with this particular knife that I'm holding in my hand. Now, this knife has several iterations. This one also came in aluminum. I believe it came in like aluminum green, aluminum blue, aluminum black, I believe, all those different colors. This is the carbon fiber version. Now, when I say carbon fiber, I mean this is a solid piece of carbon fiber. Okay, it's not like, because I want this to go back. I'm gonna put this back underneath here and make sure it lays on this and not on this rough table. I don't want to get all scratched up. So it's not like the Spartaco Sage, which I'm going to bring out right now to describe what I'm talking about. It's not like the Spartaco Sage here, which is the thin layer part, the top part of the knife is carbon fiber. The rest of it is G10. That's not the case with this knife here, the Benchmade 940. The Benchmade 940 is actually solid carbon fiber, and it feels really good in the hand. It's a beautiful, beautiful design knife. It feels really nice in your hand. Very, very light. Blade length is right around 3.4 inches, and the blade steel is S90V. Now, S90V is very well known for corrosion resistance and edge retention. In other words, it'd be a long while before you even have to worry about sharpening this guy, because it keeps an edge for quite a really long time. The other reason that's fantastic about this knife is the blade shape. You've got this really, really straight cut across the knife here, so you've got a lot of a cutting edge right there. It's got a bit of a belly, but not much, so you could do some drawing cuts with it, but for the most part, the star of the show is this long cutting length here. You'll be able to do a lot of tasks with this. Now, this is not a hard task knife. This would be good for like medium tasks. Maybe you're gonna cut up a few cardboard boxes, do some stuff around the house with it. That's what it's for. The other thing about this knife, other than the solid carbon fiber, the open construction is real attractive. That's always got me on any knife that I buy. Basically, we just have these two blue screws and nothing else in between it. You would think that there would be a little bit of wobble in it, but it's not. This thing is as solid as a rock. The carbon fiber is very, very solid. This is a skeletonized knife. And basically, the carbon fiber handle on the knife takes up the entire basically the entire knife. The actual knife itself, which is the liner, it only comes up to where you see these middle screw here. That's it. And then they just plank the hard carbon fiber on top of it with these two screws, and that's basically it. But the open construction on it is really fantastic. Has really good ergos on it, I'll have to say. The mechanism on this knife is the access lock. Now, the access lock, for what it is, it's good. I think problem with it is that the entire knife depends on a little teeny tiny spring inside of this knife called the Omega spring. And these springs have been known to pop out, and a lot of videos have talked about it. You know, it's just something that you have to deal with eventually. However, it's a pretty solid mechanism. In other words, you know, basically you can, the way it works is you can use either the thumb stud to open the knife, right? And to close it, you basically pull back on this pivot piece here, which is the Omega spring. You pull it back, and then the knife will close, and then you can close it. A lot of people have a lot of fun sort of opening the knife and then closing it like that. That's, you know, a very fidgety knife. But yeah, the fact that the spring, you know, is the only thing holding it, probably, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but apparently the knife was designed for that to not happen, I'm assuming, but it does happen, unfortunately. The washer, the knife runs on washers. There are no ball bearings. In fact, you can see the washers clearly. They're actually the size of the actual knife tang there. You can see it perfectly fit round. You can see the gold kind of sticking out in that. Yeah, so I think the Omega spring is probably something that, you know, you have to take it for what it is. And the reason I say that is because in, I believe right around 2017, Benchmade came out with an upgraded version of the Omega spring. I'm going to bring that out right now, and just so you guys can get a better idea. Now, the thing is, before I bring that out, I'm going to talk a bit more about the Omega spring. The thing is with the Omega spring, because it's just a little spring inside of it, a lot of these knives tend to have some blade play, particularly this model. And I'll explain. So, the Omega spring is the only thing that's holding this knife, pretty much allowing the mechanism to operate back and forth like this, okay? And it's just a little teeny tiny spring. Now, as a result, there's going to be blade play, not a lot, but there's, you know, blade play's blade play. This one, if I do something to the knife, the blade play goes away. Otherwise, if I'm just fidgeting with it like this, back and forth, right, the blade play is there, and I can feel that. However, if I give it a good flick, then the blade play is gone. The blade play is gone. It's pretty rock solid. What happens is, when I give it a really good hard flick, the pivot of the knife, which is the Omega spring, will have all, it will basically allow this little Omega spring to push up as far as it will push up. So if there's no gap in between the carbon fiber and the pivot here, you know what I mean? Because usually there's like a little bit, if I can explain it, there's like a little, here's the pivot, and then here's the Omega spring. There would be like a little bit of a space between the Omega spring and the pivot itself. And what you're doing when you're flicking it out is you're making it more solid like that, okay? Inside the knife, this is what it looks like versus looking like that. And then when you wiggle it back and forth, there's a little bit of blade play in there. So what I'm saying is that if you're going to flick this knife and you want to make sure you don't have any blade play, you're going to want to give it a good pop. And then you'll feel the blade play isn't there. It's because that space has disappeared. It's locked up in there really good. So if you're doing this with the knife, okay, if you're doing this with the knife, I'm going to show you. All of a sudden, because my camera angle, I can't do it. But if you're doing this with the knife, like that, and you feel the blade, yeah, there's blade play there. So when you when you disengage the knife, either with the thumb stud or with the Omega spring, you're going to want to make sure that it is solid so that the blade play isn't there. Another thing you want to keep in mind when you are popping this knife out really hard, the Omega spring will have a little bit of lock stick. In other words, you'll find yourself kind of trying to take the pivot here and pushing it back, and there's a little bit of a stick there, like there is right now. There it is. It just undid. So that's either a good thing or a bad thing. It depends on how you want to look at it. Now, keep this in mind, guys. The price of this knife now, it used to be like right around $270. But with inflation, you're looking at $315 retail, which is what I paid for this knife. Now, think about this for a minute, which is probably why this knife is going back. Is this really a knife that I want to have to worry about making sure that I pop it open really hard so that there's no blade play? Does that mean that I paid $315 for this knife so I can have that problem resolved in that way? Or do I want to get a knife where I don't have to worry about that at all? That's something you want to think about. It's... Other things on the knife, and blade play is common with this knife, unfortunately. If you check out other videos on the Benchmade 940, you'll hear there's a lot of talk about blade play and Benchmade's quality issues and blah, 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 blah. Another thing is centering. Now, I got one that is, I'm going to say, pretty much centered. Maybe it's a millimeter, not even a millimeter, maybe like a 1/100th of a tinge hair off. Otherwise, yeah, it's centered. So I'm pretty lucky in that aspect because the knife is very, as centered as it could possibly be. Another thing about this knife is that this is the second generation of this knife. The first generation had a blue screw, which I completely forgot about, and that's another reason why it's going back. Because obviously you can see the backspacer has 2 blue screws, and it used to be that the thumb stud was also a blue screw. It's not. They got rid of that. So it's kind of a disappointing thing there as far as aesthetics. So you're going, when you're looking at this knife, you're going, it looks great, but then you start to degrade it by all the things that make you unhappy about it. So it just kind of hurts you because it hurts you for the reason that you want to love this knife. That's the problem, is that we love the ergonomics, we love the design, we love the fact that it's all carbon fiber. But the imperfections on the knife, like the blade play and the Omega spring having the lock stick, and the knife, maybe when you get it, isn't going to be perfectly centered. They just took away all of the reasons why we love the knife by all those imperfections, which is what's kind of pissing you off about it. Another thing... There's good in this knife, guys. Hold on. I'll get to it. Another thing about this knife is that take a look on the inside here. A lot of people talked about this, and I'm going to talk about it. You can see the screws in there, because where the screws are, that's the actual knife itself. It's screwed into the carbon fiber. It only goes up to about where you see the screws inside the knife. They screwed it in there. So basically, this entire metal piece here is nothing but like a thin V shape on both sides, and then they drilled holes in that into that, and then they drilled it right into the carbon fiber handle, which actually is the entire knife itself. But you can see the screws are sticking out in there. Why couldn't they make those screws flush? Even though it's not touching the blade, design-wise, was that really a smart choice? I mean, you're going for aesthetics here. Someone who's going to pay $315 for a knife like this, going to look at every aspect of the knife and make sure that it's perfect. It's just pretty sad. So what's good about this knife? Everything that you like about this knife is about your eyes and what you can see on it. So what I'm saying is that they chose the right steel, right? They have the perfect handle. It's a really good ergonomic piece. The steel is fantastic. You could do some really good hard cutting tasks with this guy. So everything, in other words, it was designed for, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that the knife was designed for superiority. and to answer all of your knife everyday EDC task questions, right? The problem was it wasn't executed in the same sense that it was designed, which is sad for the gentleman who designed the knife, Warren Osborne, because he did a fantastic job designing the knife and putting it together. I think that if he were alive today and saw how many unhappy customers he had through Benchmade, he may have actually pulled the knife and maybe have sent it off with another knife company that could put the knife together in a complete package that would make every customer, every time they buy it, happy. What I'm saying is that this is a fantastic knife for what it is. And if you're going to get one of these, I would buy one used and try and accept the imperfections that I just talked about on this knife. I know it sounds like it's a crappy video because I'm not giving it any thumbs up, but you're using this knife. That's the problem, and you paid $3.15 for it. Another thing, I don't like the Benchmade clip on there. It actually says Benchmade in big, gigantic letters right there. I'm not crazy about that. Plus the fact that it probably could have had the clip maybe right up a little bit, maybe not, obviously not deep carry, but maybe shaped it a little bit more so it could ride up a little bit, because it's not a deep pocket carry clip. They could have made it a little bit more up, you know what I mean? So that's another thing. So let's do some size comparisons before I start to make a lot of people cry about this knife, including myself. I'm going to change the camera angle a little bit. I'm going to try and raise it up. I hope you guys aren't bothered by this, but I'm going to try and do this here. So here we go. I just want to make sure I don't scratch the knife or anything. You know, I'm going to put it right on top of there. Okay, so I think you guys can see it with that camera angle there. Okay, so here it is up against the Spyderco Sage. Okay, that's a medium-sized knife. So it's this blade length here is like 3.2, maybe 3.175 inches in like blade length. This is a 3.4-inch blade. Here it is up against one of my favorites, the ZT-0562. I'm actually going to do, I wish I could do another video on these two knives plus the paramilitary, but I got to return this one because it's making me shaky as I do the video. And here it is up against the ZT. The ZT is slightly larger. This is 3.5, right? And then here it is up against the Spyderco Techno. There's a small knife, right? Let me straighten it out so you guys can see. There you go. And then, as a final good quick look, I like to do small, medium, and large, so let's do that. So we've got the Spyderco Techno, the Benchmade 940 carbon fiber, and now we put it up against the ZT 0562. As you guys can see, the ZT is slightly, slightly larger. So this knife falls in between the sort of large category knife, I guess large to medium sized knife. All right. Okay, so the access lock. I'm going to get back to the access lock. Now, the access lock, because it's just a little teeny tiny spring, and I probably should have brought this out earlier. I'm going to talk about this knife here, which is the Benchmade Anthem. Now, the Benchmade Anthem basically took the Omega spring concept and upgraded it, okay? So they've upgraded it to a point where the idea of the Omega spring re-envisioned to a better version, which is this knife here. This is a titanium, all titanium Anthem knife. It's all one piece. And instead of having the spring inside the pivot, what do? They separated the spring from the knife and they put it on the inside. There's the spring right there. I think you guys can see that. So what you get with this knife here is you get it where it's super nice and smooth and solid as a rock and zero blade play, none whatsoever. No matter how, whether you're flicking it like this, you don't have to worry about flicking it. You don't have to you don't have to worry about giving it a good pop so that the Omega spring will shift all the way up and lock the blade in place. You don't have to worry about that. This knife just automatically has the solidity that it's supposed to have. For quite a while, I think a lot of people were hoping that this was going to be the new direction that Benchmade was going to go. Maybe release the 940 carbon fiber with the Omega spring. Maybe put the Omega spring somewhere. I mean, the coil spring on another part of the knife. I don't know, maybe have two of them on two springs on one side, something like that. But obviously, Benchmade couldn't afford to do that. It's just a very expensive knife to make. So expensive, folks, that unfortunately, this knife is now discontinued, and it's one of the main reasons why it's never leaving my collection. For that reason. So, the 940, for all the good that it is, I think it's sort of a sad note as far as an EDC. It's a great looking designed knife, but the execution, they seem to have missed a lot in everyday, for everyday using. And the fact that the price is so high, I mean, the price of this knife now is $315. Even when it was $270, guys, that was too much money. And for all the flaws that the knife has, I don't know if you really want to spend the money for something like this. And if you will, I'm not saying don't buy this knife, but if you're going to buy it, get it used, because it is a good designed knife, and you certainly could tweak it so that you can use it for everyday tasks. But just know that if you're looking to pay for a knife of this quality, if you're looking to pay $315 for a knife, you could do better. So that while the mask of the design of the knife is fantastic, it seems like it could be worth $315. In overall hindsight, it is not, sadly. And again, I'm holding this knife, and I just wish it was more solid because I want to love it. That's the problem. And I think a lot of people that own this knife probably feel the same way. On another note, Benchmade has one of the best warranties out there. But the way I see this knife, it's almost like, yeah, well, sorry guys, we kind of rushed this knife into production. The knife's got some flaws to it, but just send it back and we'll fix the screws, we'll fix the blade play. It's almost like they're telling you, just send it back to us, we'll fix it for you later. In the meantime, we're going to continue to keep pumping the knife out in this particular fashion. That's what it seems like to me. Where they're going to pump out the knife not 100% solid, but maybe 97% solid, or maybe even 93, whatever whatever their grading is for releasing a knife out to the public. It's, the Benchmade 940. It's associated with such a great knife maker like Warren Osborne. And you want to love it for all that it is. Again, I'm going to conclude it with this. You're going to want to love it for the steel that's on it. You're going to love it for the blade shape. You're going to love it for the whole solid carbon fiber that they put on it. That is just absolutely fantastic, because they could have easily done what Spyderco did right here with the Spyderco Sage, where they only made the carbon fiber a super thin layer on the top, and then the rest of it's all G10. They didn't do that here, right? They used solid carbon fiber. Right? But I play with it, I flick it, the blade play is there, right? I mean, you're just so disappointed, because this knife was made for excellence. It was made for excellence, but it wasn't executed for excellence. That's what I'm going to say. I hope I get a lot of comments on this. I'm sure you guys are going to say, well, mine's perfect, mine's fantastic. Well, you know what? Congratulations to you. But keep this in mind. Benchmade has had some issues. In fact, there are currently rumors right now that Benchmade is bleeding money right now. They're not making money at this point in time. They are not the company that they used to be. I think they're trying to get back out there on top. There are very few retail stores that are that have their knives at this point in time. Usually you can only buy them online. In fact, Sportco, my local Sportco company here, their Benchmade case that they put all their knives in for display is now being used to house other knives and like watches and stuff like that. It's pretty sad. So Benchmade overall, there it is right now. See, it's solid as a rock, and yet I have to kind of make sure that there's like a little stick here in the pivot right there. So I have to kind of push it back. Oh my God, I think it's really stuck there. Oh, there you go. So you got to think about that for a minute. Do you really want to have all these problems for $315? Something to think about. And I'm going to leave it at that. So this is Omar, the South African knife guy, coming at you with a legendary knife made by legendary knife maker. Something to think about. Really well-designed knife. Possibilities. Fell short. Thank you so much for watching, and you guys have a fantastic and spectacular Labor Day weekend. I'm going to go and return this one back, guys. Wish me luck.